Now, if you talk about scope management, it will obviously cover product group project scope, depending on what you are working on. Now let's talk about certain tailoring considerations from the scope management point of view. This is exactly what PMI has done from the 6th edition. There are certain tailoring considerations that are being considered for each of the knowledge areas. For example, this is important to know. What are the tailoring considerations under scope management? We always say that a one-size solution doesn't fit all, so we have to tailor the scope we are working on. If I have to work on scope management, I might have to tailor the process based on the context I am working in. That really differs if you're working in the banking industry, FMCG industry, pharmaceutical industry, or manufacturing. In each of these industries, the kind of work you may be doing could differ. The context is different, and you are dealing with different kinds of stakeholders. So, it is very important for us to tailor the process based on the context we are working in. Knowledge and requirements management. How are you going to ensure that the knowledge is gathered and documented? Based on that, you will have to think about the kind of requirements they would like to work on. How are you going to validate and control your scope? Depending on the context you work in, you would decide how to define the acceptance criteria and agree upon how and when your customer would accept the deliverables, whether by the end of each phase or at a specific milestone agreed upon between you and the customers. We can certainly tailor around this aspect as well. You also need to define the development approach, how you would like to build this product, project, result, or service that you are trying to produce by the end of the project. People might choose an agile approach or prefer to stick to the waterfall method or some other project life cycle. The product life cycle you choose would be agreed upon between you and the stakeholders. The development approach will differ if you're working in research and development, as it could be completely different from producing a product to be launched in the market. Stability of requirements. If changes are expected frequently in the product you are developing, you might not be able to go in a traditional way. You may need more interactions with the customer, more feedback loops, so you can pick up those changes, validate your requirements more frequently, and manage those changes effectively. Otherwise, late-stage changes could have a huge impact on the architecture and design that may have already been created. Of course, governance and project complexity would also define the kind of governance framework you want to establish. Would you prefer weekly meetings with stakeholders, fortnightly discussions, or an escalation matrix? What kind of governance do you want to establish in the project from a scope point of view? It is definitely important to know how you are going to manage change in the project. We have to tailor the process based on these considerations.